podcast and welcome to the 803rd Interstellar Song Contest.
I love in the German trailer, they then have Christina Rotondo's character go,
Just,
and it felt so wrong in the episode when it wasn't there.
I know. I did have a moment where I was like, this feels weird in English.
Yeah, it feels wrong in English now, doesn't it? Yeah. How have you been?
How have I been? I've been good. I was very tired yesterday. It's Monday as of day of recording. And on Saturday night, I went to a viewing party for this episode. Had lots of fun and even more drinks. But it was really good. It was hosted by the lovely Sean and Ethan. So thank you both if you're listening for hosting. But yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, oh, very nice. A very suitable Eurovision boycott. I was watching Sinners in the cinema.
Yeah.
And you know how I am with jump scares. I was just... anything that happened, I was going, Jesus! I was jumping in my seat, and that was fantastic. But no, I'm tired too, darling. Look at us both. The sun's gone, and our energy's gone again. But yeah, I'm fine. I feel like there's discourse galore in Doctor Who world and beyond this week. The latest of it was the whole, our international fans won't know any of this, but Brockwell Park discourse of whether or not Hoopla should be allowed to go event a Hoopla festival without proper planning permission. It's just discourse in every direction at the moment. That too is draining me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very happy with how I've done this. I sort of watched the only time, I'm trying to limit my socials generally anyways, the only time that I really see Doctor Who discourse is through the Wholala socials. And I feel like I kind of watched this week's episode and then dipped. Like I just didn't, I like kind of disassociated from everything. So you've been keeping a really close eye on it. And I kind of jumped back in recently to start seeing what people are thinking for the podcast. And my God, people got things to say.
They do. And like a lot of really good and valid takes, but I was so surprised by the reaction this week because it swings so strongly in two directions and not in the usual way where people are like, oh, I didn't like the feeling of this episode, or I didn't like there's usually like nitpicks that make it, a 10 or a 3 for someone.
Yeah.
But people really swung in like either like, oh my God, 5-star, one of the best of the series, or like one of the worst of all Who, because I find it genuinely offensive. And I was like, wow, okay. So I think on both sides, like this is the other funny thing. I think people are really justified in feeling two ways about the story.
Yeah.
And we will get into all of that. And of course, we'll go through some of our lighter, funny camp moments of this story. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a mad one. We were recently on this week actually. We were on the Who Knew podcast with Josh Carr, and we delved a lot into the politics of this week's episode. And it is something, like you said, we'll touch on this episode. But I mentioned when we were in that recording that this season of Doctor Who, more so than any, really resembles for me why this show is so mad. Because quite often in TV, and it does happen in Doctor Who, like the general population will all agree, oh, this was a good one, oh, this was a bad one, I like this one, I didn't like this one. Whereas this season, like you and me both really connected on our dislike for Lucky Day. And that was so widely loved, like with people saying the best of the season. And then both you and me had a really great time with this episode and thought it was a lot of fun, and were very surprised by the discourse and by people not liking it that much. And so it's been really polar opposite for some of these episodes.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I feel like we were the outliers for Lucky Day, and now I feel a bit like for other reasons coming into this one and being like, spoiler, I really liked it and I had a lot of fun. I felt a bit like, am I allowed to say that I liked it? Or does that make me seem a bit stupid? It probably does make me seem a little bit, I probably make myself seem a little bit stupid every week, so I don't think that's completely new.
I think you're more than valid like this. Spoiler alert, I liked it too. So we're going to go into a good vibe episode this week. But for anyone who might not know what we're talking about, we are talking about the Interstellar Song Contest. It's the latest episode in season 2 of Doctor Who. It aired on the 17th of May, 2025, written by Juno Dawson, directed by Ben A. Williams, and it currently has an IMDb score of 7.7 out of 10.
Which, I mean, ultimately there's two, right? For all the discourse, 7.7.
It's like, I know, and it got a better one than last week. And it got the highest viewing figures of the season so far. This one had the highest viewing figures.
And not a small bump either. It got 1 million.
Yeah, it was a really, really big bump. I wonder if it was because of the other singing competition show that was on that night.
I think it was. I think because this worked as a lead-in and it was quite well promoted. And also, it's not one that, me as a Interstellar Song Contest enjoyer, I don't think it's a bad episode for the general public to start with in this season. If they hadn't done the others, I think it represents kind of the energy of the season quite well.
Yeah.
Anyway, We will get into your thoughts soon, and then we will dive into our highs and lows.
Exactly. But before then, we're going to give you a little recap of the episode. If you've not seen it already, just jump on iPlayer, jump on Disney Plus if you can watch it. Give it a little watch. It's a very good episode, in my humble opinion. But if not, here's a recap of the story.
In the year 2925, Rylan Clark emerges from cryogenic suspension to host the 803rd Interstellar Song Contest aboard the Harmony Arena space station. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Belinda land in a VIP booth to take a Vindicator reading, but once realizing where they are, they decide they're so staying. Mrs. Flood watches them from afar in the audience of the competition. Gary and Mike Gabberstone watch them on CCTV, annoyed that they've taken their seats.
In the control room, an ambush takes place with an employee called Wynne and her partner Kid from the planet Helion, replacing the live air show with the dress rehearsal. The Doctor notices this on the monitor and immediately starts rewiring the electronics. Before he has a chance to tell Belinda what he's doing, Kid and Wynne burst the air bubble in the Harmony Arena, causing everyone in the arena, including the Doctor, to be sucked out into space, freezing in the lack of atmosphere.
Belinda manages to survive and finds Len and Cora. The Doctor floats in space and on the edge of freezing, gets a vision of his granddaughter Susan, willing him to survive. With a camp use for confetti cannon, he jettisons himself back to the arena, meeting Gary and Mike. They realise that the Hellions have built a delta wave that will kill everyone watching the contest, over 3 trillion people. When Cora realises Wynne and Kid are behind it, she reveals that she too is a Hellion, having hidden her identity in order to sing.
With the help of Gary and Mike, the Doctor creates a hologram of himself to trick Kid and destroys the delta wave. However, he goes further than he needs, torturing Kid with electrocution. Belinda and Cora walk in and the Doctor stops in shame. They learnt that Kid did what he did because the company that runs the song contest decimated his planet in order to harvest its poppies for honey. The team create a beam of light that brings the attendees of the show back into the arena and, starting with Rylan, use the tech from his cryogenic chamber to revive them.
The Doctor and Belinda leave, but are stopped by a hologram of none other than Graham Norton, telling them that the planet Earth died in May 2025. They go back to the TARDIS, but the cloister bells ring and the doors explode. Back in the arena, Mrs. Flood is revived, but her double brainstem is damaged. She bigenerates and her new body reveals themselves as the Rani. They take the Vindicator results and leave, vowing to bring the Doctor absolute terror.
Dun, dun, dun.
Ooh.
Well, we will dive into our thoughts on that in just a little bit. But before then, we were actually out on our socials at Wholala Pod and asked what you thought of the episode. And here is what some of you had to say.
Yes, over on X, William said, unfortunately, I think this could be one of the worst episodes of Doctor Who. On a positive note, I love the return of Susan, and casting Archie Panjabi as the Rani is so good. It's interesting how divisive the episode is, but not for the reasons you'd expect.
Ooh. Aidan said, the Doctor physically punishing a survivor of a genocide for being vengeful just didn't sit right with me and ruined the episode in my eyes. I wish that this went the Zygon 2-parter route and the Doctor was tired of cycles of violence instead of being vengeful over the death of a companion.
Sentient Oil said, I love these usernames, I've never felt more excited watching a TV episode. I actually watched this one in the morning because of RTD's spoiler threats. The political messaging could have been improved, but bearing in mind this will be on the BBC right before Eurovision, I'm glad they chose to go there.
Chris said, I'm not saying I think 3 trillion people should have been murdered, obviously, but the tone of that episode wasn't a call for peace, it was a call for passivity. Cultural representation can be and is a form of resistance to oppression, but not in replacement of active resistance.
Jack said, this is the only story this year that made me cry, and they were definitely happy tears. Although the reveal felt slightly anticlimactic in comparison to reveals like Yana and Missy, Juno absolutely delivered. Great villain, shocks, tears, strong cliffhanger. I'm very happy.
Yes. Over on Blue Sky, Lucy said, this episode might quickly jump to the top of my favourites list. The cameo, the reveal, the general excitement and terror. Are you kidding me? That was incredible.
Hamish said, feel quite conflicted about its handling of the political themes. Better than Kablam, but I still find villains based on real-world resistance to oppression slightly uncomfortable. However, I'm still glad it went there. But aside from that, it was great fun. Nervous how it will all be wrapped up.
Oh, Hamish, I feel you there, girl. I feel you there.
I feel you there.
Laura said, I screamed and started tearing up when Susan appeared. Oh my God. I loved it. It was camp, had a poignant message, if glossed over a little though, had scary Doctor, had Rylan, simply top tier. And I'm feeling vindicated because I have been on that Mrs. Flood train since the beginning.
Celine said, hot diggity dog. I love that as an opener. I cried, I laughed, and I was surprised. So many feelings about the Doctor's icy heart too, as we've seen his darkness accumulate over the years. This Doctor has the emotional capacity to break the cycle. Oh, and Rani is hot. I'm so excited to see how she'll fuck shit up.
Me too. Lissa Biscuits. the award-winning designer, I'll give you your full name, said, Graham Norton jump scare. I'd really enjoyed it. Genuinely quite a harrowing sequence when the bubble popped. There's something about all those bodies floating like fluid that got me on an atavistic level.
I love our intellectual listeners who give us such thoughtful comments every week, and we can't even pronounce their comments. I was reading these points. I was like, these are not points I even have the brain capacity to type out. But I'm really proud of you all. I'll start with this comment I saw on Reddit, which was from, again, usernames are just gold, Sarlacc Tit. If I had a nickel for every science fiction show I'd watched this month that starred Varadasethu and featured a storyline about a race of people being targeted by a coordinated smear campaign to make harvesting their planet of a single resource easier, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Which is true. And you won't know this, Sam, but that is a pretty major
I'm guessing it's Andor, isn't it?
It's Andor, and the Empire targets a planet that they need for a particular crystal, and horrors ensue. But yes,
horrors ensue.
Equally, they do a smear on a people, and they do far worse. And I won't spoil anything else for anyone who's not started Andor yet.
Okay. Well, I look forward. I will watch it at some point. It's just one of the Star Wars shows I've not jumped into yet. But
when you get there, darling, in your own time, when you're ready for it, it will reward you.
Okay, I look forward to it. Well, before we get to the smear campaign, I overall felt like this episode was just camp fun, like in majority. That's not taking away from the political messaging that they're going for, and it's not like necessarily my commentary on whether I think they did it well. But overall, I had so much fun with this episode. I think this episode, for me, perfectly balanced, funny, emotional, like sad, fear, danger. I felt like the threat, like Doctor Who sometimes does this thing where it'll kill a big group of people and you just know it'll get undone. Like in Empire of Death, I was like, I know this will get undone. I was confident that those people flying above the arena were dead. I didn't think there was an out.
Me too.
And I like that it wasn't just a flick switch like, oh, let's undo all that. That didn't happen anymore. The Doctor had done something to protect them and then had to work out what he could do to save them.
Yes.
And that, to me, was just very satisfying to watch.
I so agree. It was a truly chilling, horrifying visual of everyone being flung into space. And ultimately, everyone does pass out and get frozen in space. Like 100,000 people or whatever it is. And the visual is so uncomfortable. Just bodies being thrown into space is terrifying. And you're right, it's towing that line of like, what can family show Doctor Who get away with doing in terms of horror? And that was quite nice. And even the Delta Wave I felt was done quite well when the 3 of them had been hit by it and then the Doctor realizes his nose is bleeding. There was something quite horrid about that, like realizing this thing is kind of almost like designed to make your brain melt.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that, I think, where it really like oscillated between like really fun, light, silly confetti cannon moments, and then the next instant went somewhere very dark and very sad and very reflective. And it got that right, I think. Like I think nothing exemplifies that for me more than Graham Norton being the one to announce that the Earth has been destroyed. I'm Graham Norton, long since dead. Oh, sad face. And then announcing,
I wish I hadn't sold my rights.
Shouldn't have sold my rights in perpetuity, but oh well. That was great. And I think having Graham Norton of all people, as well, given his history with ruining Doctor Who inadvertently, and then being the one to announce to the Doctor, like, you know, absolute terror and destruction awaits you on the 25th of May or whichever day it is. I've forgotten exactly which day it is now. The 20 what? Around then. The Doctor's forgotten anyway.
Do you know what? It's
whatever
Saturday.
it is.
It's this Saturday coming.
Saturday, good. I like Saturdays.
In that scene with the Delta Wave, I know we'll get into it properly later, but they're covering their ears because of the noise. And listen, it's one of the 2 of them. It's Gary or Simon. I don't know which of the 2 of it is. It's not even their names. Gary and Mike, one of the 2 of them. And one of them's covering their ears by like putting their fingertips on their head and leaving these huge gaps between the palm of the hand and their ears. And I was like, sir, that's not how you do that.
Look, he might not be human and he might not have ear holes in the same place that you do. You just might not realise it.
That's very true. He doesn't have 2 hearts though.
The Earth doesn't exist anymore, so they're not human. That's actually a weird fact. I don't think about them. Anyway, yeah, I didn't really have it on my list, but those 2 as side characters, I really loved them. I felt like that as like a little like love letter to Eurovision gays. And I liked the dialogue that they had about kind of like, you don't take anything I do seriously. And it's like, Gary, it's just songs. And he's like, I'm not going to dignify that with the respect. Actually, you know what? I will. Because it's not just songs, Mike. It's part of who I am. And when you make fun of it, it's like you're making fun of me. And I thought, representation for all the gays with a special interest, but also I liked their little journey they went on.
Yeah.
You know, to almost like reignite something. And I liked when it then went into Mike being able to kind of flex his nursing prowess, and actually that's quite a massive turn on for Gary. I quite enjoyed that. And then open relationship representation in the two of them being equally horny for the 15th Doctor, I quite liked as well.
Get in line.
I just thought they felt like real people to me, and I was like, these are people I like. These are people I want to be around. These are my heroes of the story. They were just really good. I liked them a lot.
Yeah, I really, really liked them. I thought that I feel like sometimes we get given side characters in Doctor episodes and you just don't care about them. But I feel like this season in particular, more so than season 1, I really care about the side characters, and I also am like very entertained while watching them. I'm thinking about the ensemble cast we got in The Well. I'm thinking about the additional people that we had in Lux, and I really enjoyed watching Gary and I keep wondering, who is Gary and Simon? There's a TV show with the Gary and Simon.
Gary and Simon.
It's like Gary and Simon. It was Gavin and Stacey. It was Gary and Simon for Gavin and Stacey.
Gary and Simon, the gay version.
But with Gary and Mike, I felt like they were very competent and they didn't just like watch the Doctor do the story. They were part of the story and part of the solution. And yes, I know it's probably like a little bit cheesy, being like, okay, they need somebody who's a nurse and somebody who can make holograms. Oh, look, these two just people happen to survive.
Convenient. Yeah.
But it's almost like the TARDIS knew to land in that pod. You know, the
at this
TARDIS
point
could
in
land
the
anywhere
story,
and you could land there.
yes, there's enough strange forces happening in Doctor Who, be it Gods of Stories or the Time Winds or whatever it is that the Doctor is actually destined to do, despite his speech to Belinda and her calling him out on the bullshit of destiny. If indeed there is some kind of destiny, if destiny's real and it does exist, it's heading for Don Noble. If there is destiny, then that's what I choose to believe this is.
Yeah, exactly. One of my highlights in this episode, which really surprised me because when they announced this, I really didn't like it, was Rylan. When they announced Rylan was in it, I was like, oh God, they're bringing in another like person to play themselves and da-da-da-da-da. And I just like, oh, that feels cheesy to me. But the reveal that he was cryogenically frozen and just gets thawed out every year to do the song contest is so funny. And then like when he, you know, sort of quote unquote dies and he's in space and he goes, oh, not again. And then he gets frozen. But it did make me realize, I was talking to people after the episode aired and I was like, so if Earth gets destroyed in May 2025, does this mean that like on the day that Belinda got taken away, somebody abducted Rylan to host an out of space competition just before the Earth got destroyed?
Yeah.
Is that what we did?
Rylan tweeted this. He was like, wait a minute, if I'm the last person alive and everyone else on Earth is dead, am I? And then he tweeted a gif of Cassandra.
Back when I was a little boy. Oh my God, it could be. It could be.
Cryogenically frozen through to the year 5 billion and then got some more surgery. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, that's like that's like Jack in the Face of Bowville, but I could so believe that to be true.
I can believe it. It could be real. In this timeline, at least. There was a lot of camp I loved. Like, I also shocked by how much I liked Rylan. For me, like, that actually might be the two best bits of the episode, actually, for me, were probably Rylan moments. One was just right away off the bat, I just was like, this might be my favourite ever cold open for Doctor Who, and it's just my taste, that's my thing. But like, all right, babe, what's the year? 2925, venue, Harmony Arena, teeth, dazzling. I just, that strut and that like, you know, smoke obscuring his face, we know who it is, but just like the reveal of Rylan and then him going straight onto the stage and then to be joined by his like French co-host immediately, I was like, this is so camp, this is so stupid. And then the other bit was tractor beaming Rylan, like lifeless Rylan.
But I love that it missed. It kept missing, exactly, and then it finally got him.
Rylan and picking other people first. I was like, this is one of the all-time greatest shots in Doctor Who, and I'm dead serious when I say that. And that's why I think, for me, I was having so much fun that. We'll get into the politics a lot later in the episode, but I just was like, I'm so lost in the fun of the story I'm having that I was just having such a good time right up until that point. So I love that. And then also someone said online, oh, we can skip this episode, right? Like probably nothing law relevant will happen in the silly Eurovision episode. And then someone did a screenshot of a character list of Rylan, Graham Norton, the Rani, and Susan Foreman and was like, there is no way this episode is real. There is just no way this is a real episode.
I can't believe that we... Do you know what? We're jumping around this episode. Let's jump to the Susan reveal because I can't... I feel like, or at least a lot of people felt like it was coming at some point. To be honest, I didn't know if it was coming in this season or the potential next season, but we kept getting name drops of Susan and the Doctor talking about, and then we had the kind of fake out in season 1 where we thought it was going to be Susan and it wasn't. And so we could kind of see it coming. I did not see it coming in this instance, in this way, in that moment. I feel like I said this a bit in Who Knew, where it wasn't the reveal to the Doctor. So we know that reveal's coming, but it kind of feels like the wind's been taking out those sails because we now know Susan is definitely in it and most likely in the finale. And for me, the perfect way to do it would have been to have had a voice of a woman while the Doctor's in space go like, no, don't die. You've got to survive. And then just go, grandfather. And then the Doctor open his eyes and like wake up. And then we're left with the idea of like, is this reused audio? Like, was that Susan? Is this someone else? I don't know. Then when we finally do get the Susan reveal, it's a gag and it's a surprise. Yeah. And I feel like much as I was like thrilled to see her, I was a little bit like, oh, that's the reveal that she's back.
Yeah. I was just so delighted she was back at all because this was one of the few things that hadn't been spoiled for me. So when she did come back, I was like, and boyfriend of the pod, Josh, had no idea who Susan was. So we were watching it together, and he didn't really react. Like when that came up, I was like, "There's Susan." He was like, "Right." And then later we were watching.
He's like, "And who the hell are they?"
He's just like, "Right." And then we were watching our absolute favorite reaction channel, Seska Says, and this diva, I love her so much. And then she got to that part of the episode with the Susan reveal, and she goes. And she's cut her mouth and she's like shocked, and then she's like in tears, and she's like, "Oh my God." And he was like, "Wait, who is that?" And I was like, "It was Caroline Ford, it's Susan." Like, he's like, "Who's Susan?" I'm like, "It was the first companion. It's his granddaughter. It's, you know," and he's like, "Oh, he has a granddaughter." I was like, "Yes." He's like, "I thought they were just saying stuff in the first season." I was like, "No, he really has a granddaughter." And he's like, "Oh," he's like, "I thought that was just one of those things they say that, you know, is like an off screen, you know, it's like, you know, the Doctor talks about like, oh yeah, I had a brother once." And you're like, "Oh, right, sure." But he's like, "I thought that's what that was." I'm like, no.
You're like, no, she's been. I hope you gave him like a little deep. I showed him pictures and like gave him a debrief.
Yeah. I loved her just wandering around the TARDIS, spooky
in her rugs.
Yeah, in her Uggs. In Uggs, and also with earrings that look like the ring that William Hartnell had on his.
That was
fingers.
really cute. Yeah.
So that was nice. I was super excited. I mean, I don't know if I thought it was going to happen at some point, but I was very happy to see her. I hope now, I guess, for the finale that she just comes back somewhere nice at the end.
I think she'll, because people are like debating whether or not she'll come back, like properly back, whether that's it. But in Unleashed, she is having an interview in what looks like a costume. It doesn't look like clothes that someone would wear. It looks very much like a costume. So I'm confident she will be back. They haven't shown her in any promo material for the next few episodes, but I'm confident she'll be back.
I like the idea that she was like making contact with him, that she was like reaching out but it's funny because it looked like she was in his TARDIS, but then it could be her own, it could be the future, it could be the past. Who knows what magic it is? Maybe it is just a vision. But I like the idea that she was kind of reaching out and is watching now how things unfold and is trying to get closer to him. And or maybe like the effects of what happens in the finale have made it possible for them to be in touch again where it wasn't before. But yes, I'm super excited to see what happens. Someone was saying that if you now start to see season 1 and 2 as part of one big story, and you actually imagine Sutekh had been a mid-season break, series 6 style, and not a series ender, Susan's appearance actually doesn't feel that random. It feels a bit more like it makes sense in the context of one story, that she was brought up and then she later pops up and then it's like, oh my God, she's back. How is that happening right now?
I mean, I said this when the season aired. Like, we did a podcast at the end of season 1 with our thoughts, and we'll do the same for season 2. And I said, I don't feel like this is the end of a season. I feel like this is the midpoint of a season and we're being told it's the series finale. And I think that is because the season got commissioned for 2 seasons at once, and that's how Russell wrote it. So I'm confident that a lot of loose ends will be tied up by the end of this season, but that to me isn't my favourite way in running a show. I think that you need to make sure that each season feels complete in its whole. But you're not wrong in that if you do look at it as one body of work, it feels earned in a way that it might not otherwise.
Well, you know what? Flux was onto something. Serialized Doctor Who. They're onto something.
I'll quickly say this. I've bloody loved having a season of Doctor Who where you can pick up every episode from the last one, basically.
Yeah.
And it's got this underlying plot. Like, I like that at the beginning of the episode, they're in their outfits from the last episode in quite a few of these and things like that. It doesn't give Big Finish much to work with. However, in between Lucky Day and the story in the engine, the Doctor's hair's grown a lot. So there's clearly a plethora of things that happened there.
Speaking about the series overall, here comes a segue. I do think it's a bit of a shame that we've lost some of the tension between Belinda and the Doctor that was there at the start. And I think a lot of us thought like, oh, this is good, a bit of conflict, a bit of tension between the companion, like a reluctant companion. Unfortunately, it does feel like Belinda, at least in her relationship with the Doctor, has just become another companion.
Yeah.
And I think part of the issue, specifically in this story, for why that's happened, I can't remember where this was said, but I think Juno or even some of the guest writers for the season didn't know who the companion was going to be when they were writing their stories. So I think they were just writing it for a companion.
Yeah.
And so it would have been nice, I think, had they later on maybe written in a few moments of tension, like, for example, when she sees him electrocuting someone on the floor, if she was a bit like, oh, that's weird. I'm not going to immediately cuddle you because that freaked me out, actually. And that's not how I know you to be. But she didn't. No. Instead, she was like, by the way, have I mentioned you're bloody brilliant? And I was like,
what I wanted from that was a scene like Billie Piper in Rose where she sees the Doctor do this unspeakable thing and she's shocked and she's appalled and she's trying to hold him accountable. And I feel like we were almost like teased at the end of Robot Revolution. I love that scene where Belinda lets the Doctor talk about, schmoozing her and then she cuts him off and tells him he's dangerous, because not only do we have a really interesting dynamic between a companion and a Doctor, it allows the Doctor to show a side of himself that we don't see very often and might not even like very much, where he's annoyed at her for not falling for it. And I was hoping that with Karen, I was hoping this would be the episode that reignites that, because she sees him behave in this way and sees him lash out almost for the sake of it and holds him at an arm's length. But the worst thing she says to him is like, I think they're like holding hands. She's like, you really scared me back there. And I was like, that for me isn't enough of a reaction to this. And then Graham Norton pops up and all the tension fizzles.
I so agree. What I did like was her crying when she thought she was on her own. I think it's so important. I've said this many times now, and I also said this on Who Knew. I think it's so important that a companion has a panic attack now and then, because, again, highlight for me of Series 1 Rose was to have Rose enter the TARDIS and be really freaked out by the whole thing and have a cry. I think I like those humanizing moments where companions feel vulnerable and they feel scared, because it is a terrifying experience. Can you imagine the reality of being whisked off into space with a time traveler and everywhere you land, you almost die?
Terrible.
It would be horrific. It would be absolutely horrific, and most people would be horribly traumatized by it. And that also, I think that's why it's so important that they do give Ruby a story where she's struggling with PTSD afterwards, because that is how the experience would make you. So I like that. And I think especially for Belinda as a companion who hasn't chosen to go on this journey, she has to be on this journey.
Yeah.
And as far as she thought, she was just sort of stepping out and taking a pit stop at Eurovision. But hey, there we are.
Hey.
I will say, having Dug-a-Doo play over that panic attack counts.
Dug-a-Doo. I don't even remember how the song goes, because I've been too scared to listen to it. I've watched the episode twice, but I've been too scared to just listen to Dug-a-Doo, because it will be in my head so much worse than the Goblin song, so much worse than the Goblin. And we need to segue to our good friend Christina Rotondo, who was in this episode as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our good old friend of the pod, Christina Rotondo, who jumped on the podcast just before the Church on Ruby Road, as she voiced Janice Goblin, appeared in Doctor Who finally in the flesh as one of the contestants in the Interstellar Song Contest.
Yes. And also behind the scenes, she gets a little bit of a shout out in the YouTube behind the scenes, and she meets Russell and he's like, we had to get you back.
I haven't watched that yet. I'm so excited.
It's really, really sweet. It's really funny. Christina's in full costume and he's, just pounced on her on set, and it's really good. But yeah, so she was fab. The behind the scenes was fun this week as well. They made so many masks and prosthetics and costumes. I think as well, previously in Doctor Who, where they've done something like the Rings of Akatem, where they've had loads of like a crowd of aliens, it always looks like copy paste of the one bit they did film. This week, I think the visuals were so stunning, and it felt like a crowd. Like when I watch the behind the scenes and you see what the sets actually were for this episode, the sets are so small. They are tiny little spaces they've worked with. And I didn't clock, as other people have, that the corridors were reused from the Time Hotel. I should have clocked that, but I didn't. And also there's a lot of reuse set in the Well as well from that.
There's also, I believe, some parts of the set that were reused from the Space Baby station where, for example, the way that the Doctor confetti cannons himself in, bloody cat moment, cannons himself in, and the doors kind of open in that X. That's the same panel as the boogeyman when he is about to fly out the spaceship.
Right. And also, I have no issue with that. In a practical sense.
Who.
And also, I'm like, you know what? Eco-friendly, save the planet, save the costs, put the budget to normal.
Save the costs. It's so Doctor Who-y.
And it establishes a visual world as well where you can be like, that's what airlocks look like in Doctor Who. And I'm like, that's fine with me. Like, if it's the same century, perhaps, and that's what they look like.
Yeah.
So, I like that a lot.
I like that a lot too. To jump back a bit to what we were saying about Belinda reacting to the Doctor, I do like that we're getting dark, brooding, angry Doctor in this. I feel like one of the critiques that we had for season 1 was that the Doctor and Ruby just were always best friends and always got along and always saw the best of each other. And I feel like in this, we're getting to see more angles of the Doctor that we have seen before, very Time Lord Victorious-esque. And I almost feel like we could have gone even further with his reaction to seeing Belinda see him, because it kind of just goes oh, sorry, oh, and then we said earlier, you get the hug and the
oops, you've caught me.
You've caught me. Sorry, darling. Let's have a cuddle. I feel like there could have been a moment where he kind of sits with that in himself and is throws the glove and what have I done? But I love the speech that he gives to Kid, and when Belinda watches, he's like, you put this ice in my heart and it will never go away. I thought that was a really, really great moment to have for Ncuti.
Yes, he's truly disgusted by Kid. I was very pleased by flashes of the Time Lord Victorious anger. Some people might feel, oh, we've done this. But I actually think it's great because there's a bit of an idea bubbling here that as much as he claims, I've done the healing, I've done the work, I took time off, he actually maybe can't be rehabilitated or can't be therapized out of hundreds of years of trauma, and actually who maybe he is at his core, which is someone who will always be susceptible to becoming this when they're on their own. Yeah. And that's why the Doctor requires a companion, is that every time he's alone, he risks becoming this. And so actually it's not a post-rehabilitation Doctor we're looking at, but it's a Doctor who has convinced himself he's better and that everything is fine and that he doesn't still struggle with that trauma, but is kidding himself, if you will.
Kidding himself. Oh.
And I think what I felt in this with the Delta wave specifically was that there was something of a response to the ending of series 1 as well, where the Doctor is weighing up, would I kill everyone on Earth and the Daleks together? Would I do it? Am I that kind of man? And then ultimately doesn't, and it's I'd rather be a coward. I couldn't kill all these people, blah, 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 blah. But I think there's something in that moment where he's attacking Kid where I think actually there's something, he's kind of attacking himself. He's looking at someone who has survived, but now wants to perpetrate a genocide in a kind of revenge moment that he sees to be justified. And I think in that moment, maybe he sees himself. And so I think him beating up this guy on the floor is him dealing with his own demons.
He's taken out on him.
Strange way. Really, he's electrocuting himself is what I'm saying. And so therefore it's fine.
Yeah.
But that's how I kind of also read that moment.
Yeah. I mean, to get onto that moment, I feel like in Doctor Who, some of the episodes that I love the most, and I'll sort of preface this as well by saying I am a big enjoyer of this episode. And for me, this didn't take away from my enjoyment of the episode. However, I think some of the best episodes of Doctor Who are where the villain has a motive that is really understandable and you can really emotionally relate to them. And by the end of the episode, they kind of see the error of their ways, or the Doctor helps them change what they're thinking, and they either stop what they're doing or undo what they're doing, or they, by the end of the episode, we are relating to this villain. And I feel like more so than anything, it just felt a bit of a cheap get-out card for the way that the direction of the episode went, in that they were like, nope, see, you're bad, you're wrong, and I've stopped you now, where you could have opened that up to having a conversation where Kit realizes, hurt people. In the same season where you're going on about how hurt people, maybe the Doctor could have even, imagine how powerful and poignant it would be if the Doctor had echoed those words that Belinda had just said into Bina a couple of episodes ago. That was last week. Oh my God, I can't believe that was last week.
Yeah, last week.
It would have been really powerful if he'd had that moment, but I know that we wanted to see the darker Doctor and allow his anger to come out. And I think the threat of 3 billion people being killed by this one person is enough for that to happen. So I do understand why they went in that direction.
I think, I didn't recognize in this story. I was like, I guess I think I went into this story so anxious about whether they would attempt a real world parallel and really fudge it, that I more felt going into this, I didn't read this to be any kind of allegory for a real world situation, maybe naively, but that's just not how I interpreted the story. And so when he was kind of like having his revenge against the corporation, which was this kind of very vague figure, and the Doctor was kind of saying like, at face value, you're not really looking to do anything you're just evil and you're looking for an excuse. I was kind of a bit more like, oh, thank God. Because I don't need to read too much into this and we can just defeat you and we can move on with the story, which I've enjoyed so far. But on reflection, I think I really do understand the criticism that's being made here. It's kind of like in Black Panther, Killmonger came along and almost made quite a rational argument. And then was like, so my solution here is to kill everyone. And it was like, oh, no, wait, hold on. And that often happens, I think, that you basically take a villain who has a point, but then becomes so obscenely evil that you can't side with them because it's so absurd to say, and so I'm going to kill 3 trillion viewers, no matter who they are and how innocent they are. And it's like, what? Why would you do that? And then so people have taken from that, well, it's a shame that Doctor Who is portraying a revolutionary or a freedom fighter or whatever it might be that he's standing in for as violent and dangerous. I didn't take that.
Slippery slope.
I didn't take it from this. That's not how I read this story. Because then people start saying, well, actually, that's really unfair because then you're using Kid as a stand-in for someone who has actually very justified means and you are trying to turn them into a cartoon villain and make it look like, so I didn't take that from this. I do think there was room at least for a good Doctor speech here.
Yeah.
To maybe, I'm almost like you kind of wasted the good speech on Conrad and you should have maybe had the good speech here.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't like Conrad that much as a villain, but so I'm like, could you have done the good speech here? Or at least had some repercussions, I think, for the corporation to kind of show beyond just putting it on chord, kind of like, say a few words and then sing a song and it's okay. Because I did take from it that it was kind of suggesting that there's a right way to protest within the system and peacefully, which is ultimately a very Eurovision resolution because the Eurovision solution and the Eurovision ethos is all about kind of peace and love and the unifying power of music. But I don't think that was a satisfying ending because because of but I wouldn't go as far as then to say that I think, as some people have suggested, that means Doctor Who is kind of on the side of the oppressors this week.
No, for me, I could see a lot of real world inspiration that went into this story, but by that I don't necessarily mean what's happening with the Eurovision Song Contest 2025. This episode would. I also think that some people, I get frustrated with how they react with TV shows because it's not everyone understands how television's produced and not like in a naive way, it's a big machine and it's a difficult thing to kind of get your head around. But this episode would have been in production, being filmed in 2023, in production probably in 2022. And it isn't trying to be a real world mirror representation of what is happening with the Eurovision Song Contest this year. It is trying to pull on real world events and themes and morals and then turn that into a fictional story that's being shown. And I think a lot of people were upset with how it didn't exactly resemble what's happening in the world today when that isn't what I think it was trying to do.
Yeah.
And there definitely is an argument to say that, the intention of a person making a show doesn't matter as much as how that show is perceived, because I do think there are examples where someone can go into something with the best of intentions and they do need to learn when that doesn't go the way that they planned. But this didn't take away from my enjoyment of it. I did definitely have moments like you said where I was a bit like, oh, where are they going with this? Oh, where are they going with this? But where it landed, I was satisfied enough that it wasn't trying to make a social commentary on what's going on right now in the world.
Yeah.
And I do think that what they were trying to do was more so, like you said, lean into what Eurovision... Because they also didn't shy away from that. The Interstellar Song Contest is a direct result of Eurovision. Like, it stems from that.
Yeah.
It is trying to lean into the world of peace and harmony and song and unification. And that in itself has problems, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the episode. Because I don't think it was trying to do that.
This is what I was thinking. I think it's supposed to represent an ideal of what Eurovision like can be or aspires to be and what it aspires to achieve. It was a fairly shallow political point about corporate exploitation and colonialism, but it didn't go very deep. I don't think it was that strong. I also don't think it was I just wouldn't take it as far as people have taken it this week in terms of their disgust on the episode. And I think also thinking sensibly about who wrote the episode and what we know their politics to be.
Yeah.
I think, I'm surprised by some of the reaction this week. But anyway, I do also think that the interpretations that are out there are valid, totally valid readings of it as well. And I'm not trying to dismiss those. No,
of course. I have, to bring this to a lighter tone, I have an interesting fact about the corporation. So we're talking about the corporation.
Yes.
I have an interesting fact. So this isn't, so I found this on TARDIS Wiki, so it should be true. There's only one other time that the corporation has been spoken about in Doctor Who, and it's the same corporation that made Platform 1 in The End of the World. So they're a corporation that make various space platforms that hold events. And I thought that was interesting. So they want to have the Interstellar Song Contest and then watch the world burn. I do also think, this is like throughout this episode as well, I do think like Juno Dawson is a real scholar of Who. This is someone who's also like grown up with Who in the same way we've grown up with Who and is now writing Who. Mm-hmm. And I like these little nods because I think those are deliberate and those are written in. And that's a nice little thing. It's a nice little, Delta Wave. I like, bring that, like, that's the kind of like naughties nod I wanted coming back. I reckon Russell just gave them a brief overview saying, I want it to be a Eurovision episode. I want there to be this kind of threat. And I want the end of the episode to have a reveal of the character that we'll talk about at the end. And I reckon that was a Juno decision to bring back the Delta Wave. I don't think that was Russell. I think that was Juno saying, okay, well, I need something that can kill a lot of people at once. A bit of tech. Oh my God, what if it was... Delta Wave. I will also say, at some point in the last 2 years of production, should they have realised that there was a potential risk of this being read a certain way, and should they have made some script edits and some late reshoots? Probably yes. Probably yes, they should have done. But we're here. It's the episode it is. We've got what we've got. Let's move on to, relevant to this, the poppies. Because we're seeing a lot of poppies in these two series at the moment. I'm wondering, in the last, you're talking about, I keep wanting to call her Princess Poppy, but I know not her. You're talking about Space Baby? Space Babies, because we saw Poppy unexpectedly return Space Baby Poppy in the Story in the Engine and give Belinda a little wave. And then this week we have the poppies, the Poppy Honey. And I think this may be leading us somewhere. I think this may be leading us to something returning in the finale. I have a theory on this, which you know, and I think I can't delve into that theory without talking about the reveal we got in the mid-credit scene. Go on then, let's go into that reveal. We see Mrs. Flood get defrosted. The freezer has been left open and she's come out. She also says about having a double brainstem, and I immediately, I had heard the leaks that the Rani was going to be in it, and I had heard the leaks that the Rani was going to be a bi-generation of Mrs. Flood. And so as soon as she said that, I thought, oh my God, she's the Rani and we're getting a bi-generation. Like, as soon as she said the double brainstem, because I don't think that Time Lords have double brainstems. I think for me that was like a teaser into the bi-generation. But we then get, I better think of some famous last words, and she was let battle commence, and you could hear it was Kate Mara's voice, and I was like, we're doing this. We then get the reveal of the bi-generation, and I do have to say, I hate bi-generation. I just don't like it at all, and it just didn't look as good as the way that it did when David Tennant did it, and I don't know, I don't like bi-generation. I'm very glad that we got the Rani, but even the reveal that it was the Rani, the real Rani, the quote-unquote real Rani, was like in the background, out of focus, behind Mrs. Flood when she said, we're the Rani. And I was like, this just feels like a really sloppy way to do this reveal.
Yes, I really didn't like this reveal either. For me, it was another one that had been spoiled by leakers and conversation on Twitter. And it was one that was just really hard to avoid. It was the same as kind of going into the Sutek reveal where people just started saying Sutek and I didn't even know what it was based on. And then it was like, oh yeah, it's Sutek. And then in this one, it kind of built towards the reveal and I was like, it's probably the Rani, isn't it? Like, based on what? I don't know. Like, would I have arrived there myself? Absolutely not. And then it was like, oh, it is the Rani. You know, it was kind of like that. Oh, they are doing that. That's interesting. But it wasn't like a gag for me. Like, oh my God, it's the Rani. I think I'm also so baffled by Generation at this point because it seems to fundamentally contradict this very well-established no-no that the reason we can't just have 10 doctors help each other out is because Time Lords cannot overlap with their own time streams because you cannot have a memory that you are living. You know, you can't be like, oh, I remember doing this and I'm doing it right now. It just doesn't make sense. You can't hold it.
They're always like, something's very, very wrong when they do meet up.
So how two of them are existing now as if they're different people and one is subservient to the other. It almost felt as if the new Rani was hiding inside Mrs. Flood the whole time, but I just don't understand how that makes sense from a bi-generation standpoint.
Bi-generation for me, I have just from this episode changed how I think about it. Because I used to think that it was, you know, to talk about the 14th and 15th Doctor, they bi-generate. 14 goes off, lives a hell life, becomes the 15th Doctor. For me now, seeing how it is here when they're two such different people.
Yes.
It feels almost more so like the fact that it feels more so almost like the way that bi-generation works now is that once you've bi-generated, the old version of you, the Mrs. Flood in this situation, doesn't have any more regenerations. They've been revived. They're not going to die based on the battles, that the wound they've just got, but they are going to live and then they're going to die. But the Rani, the new Rani, doesn't have those memories. And I know that contradicts what happened in the giggle because 15 says, you know, oh, you worked in yourself and that's how I got better. So it does seem like he directly came from him. But this almost feels like Mrs. Flood now lives out her life with different opinions and different thoughts, different mentality, and the Rani then goes off to become the Rani. It almost feels like Mrs. Flood was a regeneration that shouldn't have happened because we said this before. We theorized whether she was the Rani, and we said that she has shown no indication to be the Rani. Nothing she's done or said has been anything Rani-esque. Whereas even in that 1 minute at the end when we got the definitive Rani, she felt like the Rani.
Immediately, yes. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering this too. Like, it almost, if I'd never seen the 14-15 split, I'd think that you kind of just grew another person out of you. Mrs. Flood can no longer regenerate, but the Rani can keep going. And you kind of just leave that person behind as like a mortal with no regenerations
That's
left.
how this feels.
That's how this feels, which actually conceptually makes more sense. It's only because they've explained that 15 has
therapy.
has had the therapy that 14 has. And he's like, I'm better because you're better. That it doesn't make sense. But we'll see how they remedy that. I've got a bizarre feeling based on nothing that Mrs. Flood is going to betray the actual Rani.
I feel this. Can I put on the pod? So me and us were chatting before. Oh, actually, no, hold on. I'll go back and I'll say what my theory was. My theory that I spoke about earlier was that Mrs. Flood made the space babies, and that's why we're getting Poppy coming back. And it's something to do with her having, because in Classic Who, the Rani owns a planet that's full of like creatures that she's made. And I don't know if they're going to lean on that in this, but I think that the Rani made the space babies. Another theory that I spoke about with Alistair before we started recording, which I've got very little to base on this, is we know we're getting something called the Unholy Trinity, and we got this really funny fumble from the BBC where they released a photo of the two Ranis and Conrad and were like, meet the Unholy Trinity. And then Russell quite quickly afterwards was like, no, that's only two of them. I said so. I said it was the two Ranis and they were one of them. I said it. So we know there's going to be a third part to this Unholy Trinity.
Yes.
We also know that in the end of the giggle, somebody with red nails picked up the tooth that was the master. I can't believe I just said a sentence, the tooth that was the master. But anyway, similar to how they picked up the ring. And we know Michelle Gomez was at the premiere in the same way that Joe Martin was at the premiere. So I think it's a really, it'll be fucking bananas if we get a finale with the Rani reintroduced, Susan reintroduced, and then Missy in the final night. And if
It
Missy,
sounds
Conrad,
too busy.
and them, I think it could be too busy, but also maybe not busy enough. I don't know. I could just see them doing something that batshit.
It would be crazy. I don't know if I can see Missy being the third part because I think it immediately overshadows the Rani to have like, man, Missy's back. But it does help differentiate the Rani and the Master as two very different characters.
And the Rani and the Master work so well together when they've been in screen together. Yeah, they hate each other. Can you imagine Missy being just pissed off at the Rani?
Yeah, well, it'd be because Missy kind of like always acts like she's sort of just drunk all the time, and then the Rani would be really sick of that, and so just be constant like, rein it in, please.
Just imagine Missy being like, "Oh, Rani, you're so fun, you blah blah blah."
Just be like, hey, some little bit bananas, and her just being like, right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued to see their intentions. Nothing we've seen in these previews, which have come out today on Monday. A lot of preview clips have started to drop and photos started to drop. Nothing makes sense. I've got no theories going in, and I'm honestly riding in pretty blind. Like I don't really know what the story is. We know that the title is Wish World, and we have Conrad, and we suddenly see that there are characters like I was going to say Mrs. Flood. I don't mean Mrs. Flood. I mean Susan Triad. Is Triad. She is in her she's in her 1960s tea outfit again. And I'm like, right, I think, and also we see the Doctor in a bowler hat and he's working. We see people with typewriters. And
Colonel Ibrahim's working it, yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like it's the unit tower that has changed into like a structure made of bone or something. So I think we're in almost like a parallel reality of some sort. And we see Belinda holding a baby. And
it's Poppy.
The baby's Poppy. And then we see the Rani's holding another baby. And the Rani's wearing a cloak that looks a lot like the cloak that Ruby's mum was wearing.
There's this picture they've also released of Conrad reading a book that is very deliberately designed in the same way as Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Eek. But the book is called Doctor Who. And then it's a bit out of focus. It's Doctor Who and the... Oh, I think it says Doctor Who and the Reality War. It's definitely Doctor Who and the blank blank. And I think it says Doctor Who and the Reality War in the style of Harry Potter. I'm hoping that is an allusion to the fact that Conrad is a despicable, terrible, awful, terrible human being. Yes. However, it definitely does allude to the fact...
Despicable Harry Potter reader.
Yeah,
a despicable adult Harry Potter fan.
I know. But it does allude to some kind of world in which Doctor Who is a story, which would lead in well from all of this, tales of stories that we've been seeing recently.
Yes, and I'd really welcome that as well. I'm not sure how the Rani has that power, because it feels like for all these god stories, it feels like a god power, unless of course the Rani is serving someone else.
Yeah.
Because we still need to understand why the Rani can break the fourth wall as Mrs. Flood. We haven't had that really answered either, because that certainly didn't... I will say, I went back and actually I watched yesterday a 10-minute compilation of like the Rani best bits, which funny enough, the Doctor Who channel posted in February this year. Yeah. Those naughty teasers. And she does, I think it's an accident, but Kate O'Mara does accidentally look into the camera at one point when she's doing a bit of an aside about how stupid the Master is. And I was like, oh, there's a little something there.
There's this photo BBC have just released literally while we're recording of in this bone structure, there's this woman with like cracked skin in like black leather with all these different like eyewear pieces so you can't see her eyes. And then like black goo dripping from her fingers.
She looks like a Gaga music video.
She does look like a Gaga music video. The more I see, that was a live reaction if I ever heard it.
I think that is. I think that's an alternative Links.
It could be an alternative. Well, there's two of them actually. Sorry, I zoomed in.
Oh,
but there's two of them. The Vlinkai.
Oh, there's something else. There's something else.
There's something else.
The set looks
more
crazy.
I see about this episode, the less I know about it.
Yeah, I'm really willing to be thrown by this one. And also, I'll say this: I've been really negative about the Rani. I'm glad the Rani's back. I hope that she's not just back and then defeated and sealed away forever. I hope that she flies away at the end of this and then returns. Yeah, because I'd like the Rani to enter the universe again now. And also, I'll say this is critical: Archie Punjabi looks fantastic in the previews. Immediately convinces me that she is the real Rani, and the costuming looks absolutely sensational. Looks like such a nice adaptation of the 80s costume, and even like it almost looks like kind of like an edgy version of the shoulder pads with like the little studs on it. It looks good.
I get it, and I love that they've carried on the red theme, because when the Rani was originally introduced, she wasn't wearing red. But I do think everyone associates that 80s camp red look with her. For me, it's a little boring. I'm sorry to say this. The hair is great. I adore the hair. But when I think of Rani, I do understand the difference between the 80s and 2025. I wanted something a bit more. It feels like you could go into like a shop and buy a jacket like that. And I'm sure it was custom made for it. And I'm not trying to discredit the costume department at all. But I just feel like with the Rani, you could have done something a bit more. A little something more than the jacket with the spikes. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a hater and I've not really seen it in action yet.
Maybe you need to see her with a big laser gun in her hand and it all comes together. Also, we're going to get her do a face-off with Mel, presumably.
Yes! Oh my God, I can't wait for that.
So that's going to be fantastic. Get it face off because she stole Mel's
look in
her face. Anyway, so I'm really looking forward to the finale. Well, this is the thing. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm also ready to be Empire of Death, which is that I would maybe love Wish World. They set up some crazy stakes, and then we get to the cinema only to have the worst night of our lives. But we'll see. Like, we will see, because it's the end of a 2-season story.
Would you know what? So before the season came out, I was convinced that all this stuff where reality has changed was going to be in the finale, in the reality war. This is making me a bit more excited, because I'm going through all these photos that have been released, I think, as we've been recording. So there's photos of like the Doctor and Mel in what seems to be this alternate reality where they're normal people. But there's also the Doctor and Belinda, and they both have wedding rings on, and they have baby Poppy in like a high chair within their house. And every single clip we have seen from this episode in the trailer, and even the leaked photo, there's leaked footage from this episode that I had seen that made me go like, okay, well, I feel like we're getting something with a weird reality. We're getting something where the Doctor's not really the Doctor. Can you think of a single piece of footage from the reality war? Can you?
Only the dinosaurs walking along and the Doctor looking up at them.
They're in this episode.
Oh, the reality war. Oh, well, maybe I would suspect something to do with Mel and the houses collapsing around her.
Mel is on the street. In the promo they've shown, Mel's in that outfit on the street that clip where reality is shifting. So I think we haven't seen any footage from the reality war yet.
The reality war. God, that would be nice, wouldn't it? If they've managed to keep that properly secret, just one story this season is properly secret. The clownish excitement I have in me as well, though I kind of lost excitement for this kind of thing a bit as Marvel's gone on, but with the idea of a reality war, and we know that Russell's kind of inspired by a lot of Marvel content, there's room for a little bit of multiverse fun here, and the walls of reality are breaking down.
WandaVision.
I'm still praying, hoping for... This would be a lovely time in the 20th anniversary year to give us a flash of Rose Tyler through the cracks of reality. But I may be clowning a little too hard there. A little too hard. I do like the idea that the Doctor and Belinda now have fallen into an alternate reality where they're very in love with each other and have a baby. Is that weird? Maybe it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird.
I like it. I think it's good. I like it.
But we know, like, the Doctor said he hadn't had children yet, in terms of, at least in the Devil's Court, he was like, well, relative to my timeline, I hadn't had that kid and I hadn't had that grandkid. It'd be quite funny if Poppy is Poppy Susan's mum?
I don't know.
What if?
I don't know how they're going to tie these plots together.
I've just had an idea. I've just had a theory off the top of my head.
Okay,
do you want it?
Go on, tell me.
You ready for this? The Rani comes back from hiding out the Time War. Okay, has survived it. Thinks all the Time Lords are dead. What's she going to do first? Repopulate the Time Lords. She's like, I'm going to have a mission here to... We never asked really like what the planet was below. What if that was her substitute Gallifrey that she was looking to rule?
It could be.
What if these are all little time babies? I saw someone say something online today, and this was almost so good that it scared me. Okay. Mm-hmm. They said, wait. They were like, what is a space baby if not an unearthly child? Space? Unearthly?
It would be a really gaggy reveal if Poppy was a space baby who gave birth later as an adult to an unearthly child, and that child was Susan.
The way we'd have to so dramatically reframe the silliness of space babies if it turned out that space babies meant unearthly children.
They're all little Time Lords.
They're all little Time Lords in glasses.
And they made up a boogeyman made out of their snot.
Naughty Time Lords.
Naughty Time Lords. Well, look, I overall thought this episode was camp fun. I don't think it was perfect, but I think it was blooming good, and I really enjoyed it. And much as I do have trepidations from finales just based on prior experience, if we are basing this 2-season arc as one overall story, and The Empire of Death was the mid-season finale point, the fact we haven't seen a single bit of footage, at least to my knowledge, from the final episode makes me very excited, especially knowing we're going to be watching it with a lot of other Doctor Who fans in the cinema.
I actually do agree. I really do agree. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be several drinks down, and I'm just going to let the episode
drinks during,
happen
drinks
to me.
after.
Drink during, before, after. Also, it finishes at a reasonable time, so we can afford drinks afterwards.
We're going to be done by like 8 p.m.
We're going to be hammered.
We need to book somewhere. We should book. No, you know what? I'm not going to dox ourselves. I'm not telling you all where we're going to see it. I was about to fully tell you all where I'm going, and you know what? You'll find out afterwards.
You'll know if we have a very good or a very bad episode. There'll be a location dropped at Wholala Pod at 9 p.m. And that's where you have to get to as quick as you can for a post-episode discussion.
Exactly. Maybe we'll go to a Spoons and put what table we're at on Hula and see who gets us a drink.
Oh my God, let's do that. That is so childish.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh God. Well, after that episode, I can't hold it anymore. We're going into Camp or Damp.
What about Camp or Damp?
No, I didn't. I didn't. So we like to play on this podcast a game Camp or Damp, where we look back on moments of the episode and say whether they were camp or whether they were damp. Alasdair, are you ready?
I'm ready.
The Dugadoo song, Camp or Damp.
The Dugadoo song is fresh out of CBeebies. The Dugadoo looks like a puppet as well. The Dugadoo looks like a puppet as well, and actually, it might be that that's just a species.
It reminds me of like the Fimbles.
Yeah, but there might just be a thimble taking part in the Interstellar Song Contest.
Oh, that would have been mad. Do you remember, like, in Star Wars, they put E.T. in the Galactic Empire at one point, and the Galactic Senate, sorry. Imagine if they had just put, like, a thimble there. It's owned by the BBC.
Just a thimble. Wait,
just a thimble.
Why not? In the night garden, which is in the background. I like that a lot. Yeah, camp.
That's funny. The Doctor flying on a confetti cannon, camp or damp?
So camp. For me, like, one of the best uses of 15's theme there's been. It looked, actually, as well, I'll say, like, a lot of this episode was shot beautifully. One of my absolute favourites visually, and I think that means a lot to me as well. And the shot of him, like, almost like Wally style, like Wally in the fire extinguisher, but him with this and the confetti cannon. And just the woo, using the very last of the air in his Time Lord lungs.
I love how tight it's on his head in that, and he's like, whoa!
That's what I mean, like, the shot is just beautiful, and then an extreme wide shot where you can barely make him out, which is little puffs of confetti.
Yeah.
And then immediately collapsing into the arms of my favourite gay couple.
Oh, that was so funny. When he, like, turns around, points, he's like, and then just, like, collapses. So camp.
Camp. Brilliant.
And finally, the Rani's bi-generation, camp or damp.
Ooh, that's difficult. That's really difficult. For me this week, it was actually a bit damp.
Mm-hmm.
If I
it was kind of in the middle, because there's camp to it, but I'm still a bit wet.
I think the camp came from the, like, oh, must we, so undignified and all that.
Yeah.
But the actual, you know what? Even if it was bad, it could be camp. So I don't know.
Why don't we leave it to the viewers? Let's leave it to the listeners.
Was it camp or damp? Because in a way, Mrs. Flood turned to the camera and going, "Let battle commence." Is it camp? Yes, of course it is. So the by generation itself, it's difficult.
Dear listener, you tell us, camp or damp.
Yeah.
I also, because we've normally recorded these episodes day of the episode airing or the next day, I've got a few fun facts for you. I don't normally have them on a new episode, but I do this time.
Go on.
This is not the first time the Doctor has been to an intergalactic version of the Eurovision Song Contest. It is not. The 7th Doctor and Mel Bush attended the Intergalactic Song Contest in Doctor Who The Monthly Adventures 1999 serial called Bang Bang-a-Boom. So they've already gone. And it was Mel.
They've already gone. Good.
They've already done it. Juno Dawson is now the 10th person to have written either Doctor Who novels, audio dramas, comics, or mini-episodes before writing for the show. Other people include Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, Mark Gatiss, Paul Cornell, Gareth Roberts, Robert Shearman, Matt Jones, Joseph Lidster, and Pete McTeague.
So, excluding maybe 2 of these, for reasons I won't say, I think we have our list of potential showrunners, minus the 2 cancellations.
Minus the two obvious ones. I mean, I think the writer of this episode could be new showrunner material, but I'll leave that to the listeners.
Yeah.
And finally, this one is really fun. Cora St. Babier, who is a Hellier resident, said that they were from the planet Trion. And the planet Trion is the same planet that the Fifth Doctor's companion, Turlo, comes from.
Oh, yes. Also, I didn't even say this episode, Cora was a real highlight, by the way. I really liked her. And also, she was in And Juliet, if you recognise her from that.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Yeah. No, she was great. Well, I don't know about you, but I am more excited going into Westworld than I thought I would be.
You know what? Me too, because I wasn't. And now these photos have come out. I am. The really weird thing was that Russell's clip that he's put on his Instagram is watermarked Russell T Davies and says like at the bottom like russelltd.co.uk. And I'm like, is that your website?
We also didn't get a next time. That was weird.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're just trying to build a bit of late hype. But I mean, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, you know who else will see? You, lovely listener, you will be seeing next week.
Yeah.
And before then, I want you to reach out to us on all of our social media. We're at Wholala Pod everywhere. And let us know, what did you think of the Interstellar Song Contest and what are you looking forward to for Wishford? You can reach out to us on all of our social media. We are at Wholala Pod everywhere. That is Blue Sky, X, Instagram and TikTok. You can also rewatch our old episodes on the YouTube channel, including our talk with the Doctor Who fans from Lux and the Gallifrey Cabaret.
Yes, you can indeed. And if you really enjoy this episode, you can rate us 5 stars. You can follow to get notifications when we drop new episodes of the pod. You can buy us a coffee, KO-FI coffee, and you can share the podcast with someone who you think will really enjoy it.
Exactly. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you like the song contest and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.